We just got a 7-team trade, the first of its kind in NBA history. In between moves like this and constant trade rumors, it feels to me like we're living in a time in which the idea of a transaction never quite goes away, and we might just be seeing the freest trade market in NBA history, one more loose and more unpredictable than ever before. Now, this trade itself was kind of the confirmation of some moves that we had already been seen made. It was just now becoming official, like Kevin Durant to the Rockets, Jalen Green to the Suns, Nickeil Alexander-Walker's an Atlanta Hawk. But it's kind of what it symbolizes that is really important to me, because 7 teams got involved in this. That is 23% of the league, almost a quarter of it, was involved in some way in this trade. That's a lot of teams to jump on a bandwagon. And for a lot of them, it was a lot smaller pieces. It wasn't Kevin Durant or Jalen Green or Nikhil. It might have been a couple second round picks or some young prospects. But regardless, they wanted to be in on it. And so you've got all of these moving pieces and all of these organizations that are moving these pieces around, and they all seem really eager, right? To all capitalize on this moment and see what they can get in return if they can get themselves involved. And it feels like more than ever, what this symbolizes to me is that teams seem more eager than ever to utilize the trade market to its fullest extent. You think of some blockbuster trades in recent years. The Minnesota Timberwolves traded away Karl Anthony Towns after 9 years with the franchise. Before that, a couple years before, Minnesota made more headlines with their Rudy Gobert trade. Anthony Davis going to the Lakers. Of course, Luka Doncic joining the Lakers as well and shipping AD off to Dallas. Perhaps the biggest trade that we've ever seen in the history of the NBA. It just feels like more and more so we're seeing these big moves being done through trade. Even LeBron James, a top 2 player in NBA history, a superstar in every sense of the word, 4-time NBA champion, still a top 10-ish player in the league at his age. That's incredible. And though, it feels as though we've got some rumors this offseason. It wouldn't be unfathomable to see him be traded. It would be shocking, but we're hearing about it for perhaps the first time, and that feels crazy to me. The Milwaukee Bucks, they waived Damian Lillard, and now that opens up the floodgates for Giannis once again. Is he going to be happy with all the moves that they're making, or does he want out? There's a lot of circumstances regarding trades right now, and the market feels freer than ever. Why is this? Well, first, I think we're seeing inflation of the NBA's first round pick. Because when you've got a trade going on, you've got to have assets to back that up. And you look at the Desmond Bain trade, the Rudy Gobert trade, the Mikal Bridges trade. There were a lot of first round picks that got moved in each of those. And yes, you can argue about the value of, how high those picks were, especially in this Bain one. But at the end of the day, it's a lot of draft capital to be moving on from. I think Mikal, that trade was 5 first round picks. Desmond Bain was 4. Gobert got a few as well. And why is that? Why are we seeing so many first round picks get moved? Why is it seemingly becoming inflated? In which these first round picks are devalued. And that is because I think we're seeing prospects more and more so in the later picks of the draft, whether it's the late first round, beyond the lottery, or even in the second round. We're seeing these picks become more prosperous and come into their own as players, as opposed to simply just being top heavy. And of course, you're going to have a draft like the Wemby draft, where there's an undeniable number 1 overall pick that everybody wants, but then you're going to have ones like the 2020 draft, in which there's talent all the way around. Tyrese Halliburton, the back half of the lottery, Tyrese Maxey not even in the lottery, just stuff like that. Even undrafted guys who've proven their value, Austin Reeves, Fred VanVleet. We're seeing a devaluation of the first round pick, and with that opens up the market because teams are more willing to move on from these first round picks. And when they're more willing to move on from these first round picks, that means that they're looking sometimes. And they might see a star that they want or just a player that fits well within their system and say, hey, I want this guy. I'm willing to move on from some picks for him from some draft capital that might be valuable, but I don't see as valuable as this certain player. And so a franchise is willing to move on from those picks to pursue a player because they feel as though they can get something solid in the draft anyways. And so that really opens up the market. And that's one reason why I think we're seeing all of these big moves, these blockbuster major trades, and every team seemingly wanting to hop on the bandwagon and get a trade done because they feel as though their best value is in a trade. They can move on from their first round pick and still get good value in the draft as well as a good player that they want, that they're trading for, that they are targeting. And the second reason I think is kind of the state of NBA media. And I think we are really seeing kind of the polarization of NBA media, in which everything kind of seems exaggerated. It seems like everything is a big headline, no matter whether it amounts to much or not. And ultimately, it's a business, right? And that draws the most headlines. That brings in the most clicks. Is to perhaps say something outrageous, because then people want to hear why that is, why you're saying that. So then you say something outrageous, and it spreads like wildfire. And then all of a sudden, you're getting all these rumors that may have been founded upon something that was really minuscule in the grand scheme of things, but it got out of control like a wildfire. And it just kept spreading and spreading. So even if you're not getting a trade, you're hearing about a trade and what could happen. Look at LeBron James. There's no guarantee he gets traded, but we're getting a lot of rumors about him because it gets people talking. And there may be some truth that is based in, but now you hear about it. You hear Rich Paul say that LeBron, he values a team that's looking to win a title. He understands the Lakers building towards their future, but the King wants a ring. And you think about how LeBron might be in the final year of his career. So does he want to go out on the sunset with a championship? That's a big decision to make, and it can get you thinking, get your wheels turning. So even when you're not getting a trade, you're hearing about a trade, and it's just a constant cycle. And when you start hearing about a trade, it kind of begins to manifest into reality. All of a sudden, these reports of LeBron James maybe not being the happiest with the Lakers organization, that gets back to Los Angeles, and they begin to wonder, hey, what is our future here with LeBron? Now, if you're an organization with some integrity, you're not going to allow the press necessarily to make your decisions for you, but it kind of can begin to make you think and begin to analyze and wonder something that maybe was in your head before, but now it is about the value of this player and if we'd be better off trading him. Look at Luka Doncic. I think most people could tell you, I think everyone could tell you that that was not a good trade by the Dallas Mavericks. That was the initial reaction. And I think as time has progressed, we have seen that maybe this roster has a lot of talent in the Mavericks. Kyrie Irving, Anthony Davis, Cooper Flag especially. In hindsight, the roster doesn't look bad, but it's still crazy to move on from your franchise cornerstone when he's still so young. And it feels like, as crazy as it is to say, he might not have even hit his prime yet. Because based off his age, when most guys get there about 27, he still has not peaked in the NBA. So it feels crazy to trade someone like Doncic. But for Nico Harrison, in his mind, he was thinking, I wonder if I can get someone that I think is better for this roster. And with the radicalization of social media, NBA media, how it feels like everything has to be done now, in the moment, and is very much based upon reactions and emotions. When you've got a feeling, it's kind of like you got to act on it. And so I know this isn't a perfect example. It was like the people in Dallas were calling for a Luka trade. It was only Nico Harrison, but it's kind of that same psychology of it. The voices Nico was hearing was not from the outside, but it was from his own mind. That maybe he wants to test the value of Luka and trade him away because he has his own question marks about him. And social media can do that same thing. It can create question marks about a player, question marks about their value, about if you should trade them, and that can kind of seep into the front office, into the organization. Will it make your decisions? No, but it can get into your subconscious. And both these factors combine to create a trade market that I think is more free than it has ever been in the NBA. And on one hand, that's exciting. It's unpredictable. You never know what's going to happen next. I mean, at the day of recording, earlier this morning, Norman Powell is no longer a Clipper, and it felt like he really found a spot there as a volume scorer for them last year. You just never know what's going to happen. So on one hand, yeah, that's really fun. It's great for someone like me trying to make it in the sports media world, on sports YouTube, whatever it might be, because there's something to talk about. It's especially great for the established channels like Kenny, Dom2K to have these big moves to talk about. But on one hand, when we are faced with unpredictability, is there ever going to be a crash? a moment in time in which this growing trade market that feels more free than ever suddenly goes wrong. Something goes awry. A transaction turns out to ultimately harm a team far more than it helped them. Because with every inflation comes a downturn. And I feel as though this trade market may not always be this crazy forever. Because how sustainable is it really? At some point in time, some team's going to take a swing, and it's not going to work out for them, and that might scare away some other teams because people want to follow the successful formulas. It's why teams adopted the 3 pointer with all the success that Golden State had. It's how the 3 and D archetype became so prominent. So eventually, I think the trade market is going to crash. But let's enjoy it right now. It gives us a lot to talk about, and it's very, very interesting because it feels just more free, more unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen. And in some ways, that's beautiful. The NBA trade market is more free, it's more loose than I think we've ever seen before. Through the radicalization of NBA media, in the devaluation of the first round pick, we are living in a time in which right now we never know what's going to happen in the association. And as long as it works, this roller coaster is going to continue. What a time it is to be an NBA fan.